What if I told you that medieval farmers grew vegetables so powerful, so nutritious, and so climate-proof that modern agriculture basically forgot them on purpose? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, your grocery list might change forever. Imagine a world without supermarkets, without fridges, without fertilizers, just soil, seasons, and survival. Yet medieval farmers didn't just survive, they thrived because they grew vegetables we barely remember today. Vegetables that laughed at drought, laughed at frost, and kept entire villages alive during famine. Sounds unreal, right? But it's true. Let's start with skirret, a sweet, carrot-like root that kings once demanded for their royal tables. It grew easily, stored well, and tasted like honeyed parsnip. So why did we replace it with bland supermarket carrots? Then there's good King Henry, not a ruler, but a leafy green so nutritious it was called the medieval multivitamin. Poor farmers depended on it, yet today it's almost extinct. And here's the twist. Many of these forgotten crops were stronger than modern vegetables. Take sea kale, growing wild on salty shores where nothing else survives, packed with minerals feeding coastal communities for centuries, or Alexander's, a celery-like plant the Romans brought to Britain, which fed people during plagues and wars. Yet now we grow tasteless celery instead. Strange, right? But it gets crazier. Medieval farmers also grew salsify, called the oyster plant because it tasted like seafood. Without the ocean, in landlocked villages, this was luxury food. Imagine that, no ships, no imports, just soil and smart farming. And then there's scorzonera, the black root vegetable that fought disease and boosted immunity long before superfoods became a trend. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Industrial farming didn't choose the best vegetables. It chose the easiest to ship. Flavor, nutrition, survival power, those became optional. Medieval crops like rampion, chard, fat hen, and parsley root were pushed aside because they didn't fit into plastic packaging or global supply chains. But nature never forgot them. These plants still grow wild, still survive floods, frost, and drought, still waiting for us. Now think about today: climate change, rising food prices, fragile supply chains. Sound familiar? Medieval farmers already solved this problem centuries ago. They grew diversity, they grew resilience, they grew food that didn't need chemicals to survive. And here's the big reveal: the future of food might actually be hidden in the past. Those forgotten vegetables weren't mistakes, they were solutions. If we bring them back, we don't just revive history, we secure survival. So next time you see the same boring vegetables on your plate, remember, our ancestors knew better, and now so do you. But wait, the story doesn't end there, because medieval farmers weren't just growing random plants, they were running a survival system that modern farming completely forgot. Picture this: no pesticides, no lab-made seeds, no chemical boosters. Yet their crops fought back against insects, disease, and harsh weather all on their own. Take mallow, for example, a soft leafy plant that healed wounds, calmed stomachs, and fed families during hard winters. Or lovage, stronger than celery, bursting with flavor, and so powerful it was used as both food and medicine. And here's the twist: these plants weren't rare. They grew everywhere. Roadsides, fields, forest edges. Medieval farmers didn't need supermarkets because nature was their supermarket. Now let me ask you something uncomfortable. How many modern people could survive if food trucks stopped for just 1 week? Medieval villages survived wars, plagues, and famines because their fields were full of backup crops. Forgotten heroes like chervil, orach, and perennial leeks that kept coming back year after year. No replanting, no seed companies, just nature's own system. And then there's marsh samphire, growing in salty mud where nothing else lives, feeding coastal communities with minerals from the sea. Or horehound, bitter, tough, but powerful, used for coughs, infections, and survival. These weren't fancy foods, they were lifelines. And here's the shocking part: many of these plants grow better in poor soil than modern crops do in rich soil. So while today's agriculture struggles with climate change, medieval crops are just chilling, still growing, still surviving, still waiting. And the biggest irony? We call them weeds. The very plants that once saved human lives are now pulled out and thrown away. But what if those weeds are actually our future? What if the solution to food shortages, rising costs, and climate chaos isn't high-tech labs, but low-tech wisdom? The past isn't dead, it's whispering. And the question is, are we finally ready to listen? Now here's where the story turns dark, Because the real reason these powerful medieval vegetables disappeared isn't progress, it's profit. When industrial farming took over, it didn't care about survival, nutrition, or resilience. It cared about speed, size, and shipping. Crops that grew fast, looked perfect, and could survive long transport were chosen. Everything else, deleted, forgotten, buried in history. Skirret was too slow. Good King Henry wasn't uniform enough. Lovage was too strong in flavor. So they were replaced with soft, watery, flavorless versions that look good on shelves but fail in real survival. And here's the scary part. Our entire food system is now built on just a few fragile crops. One disease, climate shift, one supply chain crash, and everything falls apart. Medieval farmers never made that mistake. Their fields were full of diversity. If one crop failed, 10 others survived. If pests came, some plants resisted. If winter was harsh, root vegetables waited underground like hidden treasure. They didn't panic, they adapted. But modern farming? It panics easily, and nature is getting angrier. Floods, droughts, heat waves, soil collapse. This isn't the future, this is now. Yet the solution isn't new technology, it's old wisdom. The forgotten vegetables we call weeds are actually warriors. They don't need chemicals, they don't need perfect weather, they don't need protection, they fight back. And here's the emotional truth. Our ancestors trusted the land, but we only trust factories. They trusted diversity, we trust uniformity. They trusted nature, we trust packaging. But history is trying to warn us. The past isn't just a story, it's a manual, a survival guide. And the biggest twist of all? The future of food might not be in laboratories, skyscrapers, or space farms. It might be growing quietly in forgotten fields, roadside dirt, and wild corners of the earth, waiting for us to remember. Because sometimes the way forward is actually backward. But let's go even deeper. Because medieval farmers didn't just grow forgotten vegetables. They built an entire philosophy of survival around them. Their gardens weren't neat rows like modern farms. They were living ecosystems. All plants protected smaller ones from wind. Strong-smelling herbs confused insects. Deep roots pulled water from underground during droughts. Every plant had a role. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. And here's the twist. Those messy medieval gardens were actually smarter than today's clean, perfect-looking farms. Modern fields are fragile. One pest attack, one disease, and everything dies together. Medieval fields? They were chaotic but powerful. If one crop failed, another stepped in. If insects attacked, natural defenders fought back. Nature handled the problems without chemicals. And here's something most people don't realize. Many forgotten vegetables were self-healing for the land itself. Plants like fat hen and auroch restored soil nutrients. Chicory broke hard ground with deep roots. Comfrey pulled minerals from deep underground and fed other plants. The soil stayed alive. Today, our soil is tired, stripped, and dependent on artificial fertilizers just to survive. And now ask yourself, why are modern foods less nutritious? Why do we need supplements? Because our ancestors didn't eat empty food. They ate strong, wild, nutrient-dense plants that grew slowly and naturally. Their food wasn't pretty, it was powerful. And here's the emotional punch. While we chase convenience, our connection to the land is fading. We don't know where food comes from anymore. We just know where to buy it. But medieval farmers knew their food. They touched it, grew it, trusted it, and maybe that's what we've really lost. Not just forgotten vegetables, but forgotten wisdom. The wisdom that food is not just fuel, it's survival, culture, and connection. And now, here's the truth most people aren't ready to hear. We didn't lose these medieval vegetables by accident. We abandoned them by choice. We chose speed over strength, convenience over resilience, appearance over nutrition. And in doing so, we traded a food system built for survival for one built for sales. But the land never forgot. Those forgotten crops are still out there, growing in wild corners, old fields, forest edges, quietly proving that nature doesn't need our permission to survive. The real question is whether we can survive without nature. Because every climate disaster, every food shortage, every rising price is a reminder that our modern system is fragile. Meanwhile, the past is sitting there with its hands folded, saying, "We already solved this." Medieval farmers didn't need technology to understand resilience. They trusted diversity. They respected the land. They grew food that could fight back. And here's the powerful reveal. The future of food isn't about going forward. It's about going back. back to stronger crops, back to smarter farming, back to forgotten wisdom. Because when the world becomes uncertain, the answers don't come from new inventions, they come from old knowledge. So the next time you eat, ask yourself, are you consuming food made for profit or food made for survival? Because history isn't just behind us, it's guiding us. And if we're smart enough to listen, we might just save ourselves. But here's the final twist nobody talks about. These forgotten medieval vegetables aren't just history. They're still alive, right now. Growing in wild fields, abandoned farms, roadside soil, and even backyard corners. Skirret, fat hen, good King Henry, lovage, chicory. They didn't disappear, we just stopped looking, and that's the scary part. Because while we chase futuristic food, lab-grown meat, and artificial solutions, the real answers are quietly growing under our feet. Medieval farmers didn't have Wi-Fi, tractors, or science labs, yet they built a food system that survived wars, plagues, and climate chaos. We, with all our technology, still panic when supply chains break for a week. That tells you everything. The past wasn't primitive, it was practical, it wasn't weak, it was resilient. And maybe the biggest bowl is this: progress doesn't always mean moving forward. Sometimes it means remembering what we already knew. So the next time you hear the word old-fashioned, don't think outdated, think battle-tested. Because the food that kept humanity alive for centuries might be exactly what we need to survive the future. And if we ignore that lesson again, history won't repeat itself. It will replace us. And now comes the most uncomfortable truth of all. Most of us don't actually want real resilience. We want comfort. We want food that looks perfect, tastes predictable, and arrives effortlessly. Medieval farmers didn't have that luxury. They lived close to the land, close to hunger, and close to reality. Every seed they planted was a gamble. Every harvest was a victory. They understood something we've forgotten. Food is not entertainment, it's survival. Their vegetables weren't chosen for Instagram, they were chosen for endurance. Bitter plants that fought disease, tough roots that survived winter, wild greens that returned every year no matter what. These crops weren't trendy. They were necessary. And here's the emotional punch. While we scroll, swipe, and consume, the knowledge that once kept humanity alive is fading into silence. Old farming wisdom is disappearing. Ancient seeds are vanishing, and with them, our connection to real resilience. But the story isn't over yet, because every forgotten plant that still grows in the wild is a reminder that nature hasn't given up on us. The question is, have we given up on nature? Or are we finally ready to remember what survival really looks like? So here we are, at the end of the story. But maybe this isn't an ending at all. Maybe it's a beginning. Because the forgotten vegetables of medieval farmers were never just about food. They were about freedom. Freedom from fragile systems. Freedom from dependence. Freedom to survive no matter what the world throws at you. Our ancestors didn't wait for solutions. They grew them, in their soil, in their gardens, in their communities. And now, in a world facing climate chaos, rising prices, and uncertain futures, those same solutions are still waiting for us to remember them. Not in museums, not in history books, but in the earth itself. The past isn't asking us to go backward, it's asking us to go wiser, to choose strength over convenience, diversity over uniformity, survival over appearance. Because when the next big crisis comes, and it will, the people who thrive won't be the ones with the fanciest technology. They'll be the ones who understand the land, respect and grow food that can fight back. The medieval farmers already showed us the way. The question is simple now. Will we ignore their wisdom? Or will we finally grow it again?